Sometimes your baby chooses one parent over the other, not randomly, not occasionally, but clearly. They reach for one and not the other. They calm down faster with one and resist the other. They smile at one and turn away from the other. And when that happens, it can feel confusing, even a little painful, because from the outside, it looks personal, like your baby is making a choice, like they prefer someone else. But that's not what's really happening, because your baby is not choosing in the way you think. They're not comparing, they're not judging, they're not deciding who they like more. Something else is happening, something much deeper. Now imagine this. You walk into the room. Your baby sees you. For a moment, they pause, they look, they react. And sometimes that reaction is not what you expected, not rejection, but not the connection you were hoping for either. And it leaves you wondering, why? Now here's what most people don't realize. Your baby is constantly building patterns, not through words, not through logic, but through experience, through repetition, through what feels familiar and what doesn't. And when they reach for one parent over the other, it's not about preference. It's about what their body understands, what feels predictable, what feels safe in that moment. And that can change, more than you think. Now this is where things get interesting, because what looks like favoritism is often something completely different. And once you understand it, those moments stop feeling confusing and start making sense. So in this video, we're going to look at why babies sometimes prefer one parent and what they're actually trying to communicate when they do. Because the answer is not what most people expect. And the first reason is something almost every parent overlooks. The first reason is something that happens every single day, but almost no one notices it. Familiarity of response. Now imagine this. Your baby is uncomfortable, not extremely upset, not crying loudly, just slightly unsettled. Maybe they're tired, maybe overstimulated. Maybe something feels off, but not enough to cry yet. And in that moment, one parent reacts in a very consistent way. Same tone, same rhythm, same kind of movement. Again and again and again. Nothing dramatic, just predictable. Now the other parent reacts too, but differently. Sometimes softer, sometimes more energetic, sometimes distracted, sometimes changing approach. Not wrong, just different. Now here's what your baby does with that. They begin to associate, not consciously, not with thoughts, but with feeling. When I'm like this is what happens. And over time, that pattern becomes familiar, not because it's better, but because it's predictable. Now imagine being in a situation where you don't understand anything around you. No words, no explanations, only sensations, only reactions, only patterns. What would feel safest? Something new every time, or something you recognize? That's where your baby is. So when they reach for one parent over the other, it's not because they've chosen them. It's because their body recognizes what comes next. And that recognition creates comfort. Now here's the important part. This doesn't mean one parent is doing it right and the other is doing it wrong. It simply means one pattern has become more familiar, and familiar feels safe. Even if both parents are loving, even if both are present, even if both are doing their best. Now think about how easy it is to misinterpret this, to take it personally, to feel rejected. But what your baby is responding to is not who you are. It's what they've learned to expect. And that expectation is built in small moments, repeated again and again and again. Now here's where it gets even more interesting, because this is only the surface. There's another reason that can completely change how your baby reacts to each parent. Now here's the second reason, and this one is less visible, but much more powerful. Emotional state. Not what you do, but how you feel while you do it. Because your baby doesn't just respond to actions, they respond to energy. Now imagine this. You pick up your baby. Your hands are gentle. Your voice is calm. Everything looks right, but inside, you're tired, distracted, thinking about something else. And even if you don't show it clearly, your body does, in the way you hold them, in the way you move, in the small pauses in your rhythm. Now imagine the other parent. Maybe they're not doing anything better, but in that moment, they're more present, more focused, more available. And your baby feels that difference, not consciously, but physically. And that's the key, because your baby is not reading your intention, they're reading your state. And that state changes how safe the interaction feels. Now think about how subtle this is. From the outside, both parents look the same. Both are caring, both are responding. But from your baby's perspective, the experience feels different. And that difference can influence who they reach for in that moment. Not permanently, not as a fixed preference, but right then. Now here's something important. This doesn't mean you need to be perfect. It doesn't mean you have to feel calm all the time. That's not realistic. What matters is awareness. Because when you understand this, you stop focusing only on what you do and start noticing how you are. And that alone changes a lot. Now, here's the third reason, and this is where many parents get it completely wrong. Timing. Not what you do, not how you feel, but when you show up. Now imagine this. Your baby is starting to get uncomfortable. Not crying yet, just shifting, looking around, their body changing slightly. It's a small window, easy to miss. One parent notices it early. They respond before it escalates, before the discomfort becomes overwhelming. They adjust, they connect, they meet the baby right there. Now the other parent responds too, but a little later, when the baby is already more upset, more tense, more reactive. And now the interaction feels different, not because of the parent, but because of the timing. Now here's what your baby experiences. With one parent, things are resolved early, smoothly, predictably. With the other, things are resolved too, but at a higher intensity. And over time, that difference matters. Because your baby starts associating each parent with a different type of experience. One feels easier, the other feels more intense. Not worse, just different. Now imagine being in that situation repeatedly. Which one would your body move toward in moments of discomfort? The one that feels smoother, more predictable, less overwhelming? That's what your baby is doing. Not choosing a person, responding to a pattern. And once you see it this way, something changes. Because you stop asking, why does my baby prefer them? And start asking, what is my baby experiencing with each of us? And that question changes everything. Now here's where it goes even deeper, because there's another factor that most people don't even consider. Now here's the fourth reason, and this is one most people never even consider. Associations built over time, not from big moments, but from small ones. the kind you don't even notice. Now imagine this. Your baby is with one parent during calm moments, feeding, resting, falling asleep, quiet interaction, soft voice, slow movements. Now imagine the same baby with the other parent during more active moments, play, movement, stimulation, energy, laughter. Nothing wrong with either. Both are important, both are healthy, but they feel very different. Now here's what your baby does with that. They begin to associate each parent with a type of experience, not consciously, not with thoughts, but with feeling. One becomes linked to calm. The other becomes linked to stimulation. Now imagine your baby is tired, overwhelmed, needing to settle. Which one will they move toward? The one that feels calmer. Not because they prefer the person, but because they're responding to the state they need. Now imagine the opposite. Your baby is alert, curious, ready to engage. Now they might move toward the parent associated with energy, with play, with movement. And suddenly, what looked like a fixed preference starts to shift, depending on the moment, depending on the need, depending on the state your baby is in. Now here's what makes this so important. Because many parents see only one side. They see the moments when the baby chooses one and assume it's always the same. But they don't always notice the context, the state, the timing, the need behind it. And without that, it's easy to misunderstand what's happening. Now imagine how different it feels when you start seeing those patterns. Not as rejection, not as preference, but as adaptation. Because your baby is not choosing a person. They're moving toward what their body needs in that moment. And once you see it this way, those moments stop feeling personal and start making sense. Now here's the last reason, and this one changes how you see everything. Now here's the fifth reason, and this is the one that changes how you see everything. Your baby is not choosing a person. They're choosing a feeling. Now imagine this clearly. In one moment, your baby reaches for one parent. In another moment, they reach for the other. From the outside, it can look inconsistent, confusing, even unfair. But from your baby's perspective, it's actually very simple. They're moving toward what feels right in that exact moment. Not who is better, not who they love more, but what their body needs right now. Now think about everything we've talked about. Familiarity, emotional state, timing, associations. All of these create a kind of internal map, not a conscious one, but a felt one. And your baby uses that map to decide where to go, who to reach for, how to respond. Not as a fixed preference, but as a flexible response. Now imagine how different that is from what most people believe. Because many parents see this as rejection, as favoritism, as something personal. But it's not. It's adaptive. It's dynamic. It changes. And that means something very important. Nothing is fixed. Not the preference, not the pattern, not the reaction. Because as your baby's experiences change, their responses change too. Now here's what matters. Not trying to be the preferred one, not trying to compete, not trying to force connection, but understanding the experience, being present, being consistent, being aware. Because connection doesn't come from being chosen. It comes from being understood. And when you shift your focus like that, everything changes. Less pressure, less confusion, less comparison, more clarity, more connection, more trust. Because instead of asking, "Why doesn't my baby choose me?" you begin to see, "My baby is telling me something." And once you understand what that is, those moments stop feeling painful and start becoming meaningful. If this made you see your baby differently, subscribe, because sometimes what feels personal is actually something much deeper.